and they could do what they want. That's why I got into politics, because it's not our money. It's the taxpayers' money. It's the hard-working people every day who are honest and pay their taxes. And you know, the government that motivated me to run as a businessman was because they took our money, they gave it to their friends for no work.
Statements by members. Déclaration des députés. L'honorable député de...
The honourable member for Signy, Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today as we celebrate the 71st anniversary of the liberation of the Netherlands. More than 7,600 Canadians died during the 9-month liberation battle, and a vast number of our Canadian lads are buried in Holland. More than 1 million Canadians are of Dutch descent, and almost every Dutch family has a relative in Canada. One of the reasons why my parents came to Canada was because of the liberation of Holland. Yesterday I was honoured to take part in a Dutch Remembrance Day ceremony with the Ambassador of the Netherlands to Canada, Mr. Kees Cole. Spring is the best time to celebrate the friendship between the Netherlands and Canada. Each May, Ottawa is coloured by the blooming tulips from the Netherlands as a sign of gratitude of the efforts extended during World War II. I encourage all my honourable colleagues and all Canadians to learn more about the heroic efforts Canada played in the liberation of the Netherlands and join in the celebrations of our two nations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Caribou, Prince George.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Cancer has touched all of us at some point in our lives. Over the past few months of 2016, our family has lost a cousin and an uncle. This weekend in Prince George, I'll take part in our annual Canadian Cancer Society 24-hour Relay for Life, raising funds for cancer research and vital support services for those fighting cancer and their families. I'll be walking for those that have fought cancer and lost, and those who continue the fight today. I'll be walking for my little brother Trent, who has fought cancer twice, Mr. Speaker, and kicked its butt. And I will be walking for our colleague from Scarborough Agincourt, who indeed himself is fighting for cancer. I ask our honourable colleagues to join with me today and every day in the fight against cancer. We can and we will win this fight. Our collective goal should be creating a world where no Canadian, no human lives in fear of cancer. My goal for this Saturday night, Mr. Speaker, is to walk the entire 24 hours with the Hell Yeah Prince George team. It's going to be tough, but not in comparison to the fight against cancer. Thank you, sir.
Good. The honourable member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, today I want to highlight the vibrant cultural scene in the municipality of Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu. I wish to join the local paper, Le Canada Français, an institution for over 150 years, in honouring Mr. Guy Boulanger. I salute his leadership over the last 27 years as director of the Society for the Promotion of Cultural Events. Thanks to the Théâtre des Deux Rives, which he modernized, and the Cabaret Théâtre du Vieux Saint-Jean that he set up, the Upper Richelieu region now welcomes over 70,000 spectators every year. Thank you, Mr. Boulanger, for your years of work and commitment to promote culture in our region. With our vibrant cultural scene, we will be celebrating all year the 350th anniversary of Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Hamilton Centre.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of myself, the member from Hamilton Mountain, my leader, my caucus, and my party, I rise in the House today to join with Hamiltonians in mourning the loss of Ian Deans and to extend our sincere condolences to his family. Starting as a Hamilton firefighter and becoming a political giant, Ian was the MPP for Wentworth from 1967 to 79 and was the MP for Hamilton Mountain from 1980 to 86. Ian's incredible talent made him an ideal House leader, not just at Queen's Park, but here in Ottawa as well. For 10 years, Ian served as the chair of the Public Sector Staff Relations Board. I am honoured to have called Ian a friend and a mentor. He was the one in 1984 who convinced me to move from the labour movement to the political arena. Ian was one of the most naturally gifted politicians I've ever met, and he set the gold standard for what it means to connect with your constituents, represent your community, and make a real difference here in Parliament. Hamilton has lost one of its true champions. Rest in peace, my friend.
Wow.
The honourable member for Thunder Bay, Rainy River.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to acknowledge Vince Mirabelli for all the outstanding work he does in our community of Thunder Bay. Mr. Mirabelli has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars and donated countless of hours for an array of local charities. He most recently was named the first recipient of the Canadian Realtors Care Award. In 2005, he kickstarted a gala fundraiser for Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Foundation. This event has raised more than $500,000 for the hospital over the last many years. In 2009, he established the Mirabelli Pediatric Endowment Fund to help support the hospital's littlest patients. On top of this generous monetary donations, Vince has also dedicated a dedicated companion to a child living with cancer as part of Camp Quality. He continues to make our community of Thunder Bay a better place. Congratulations, Vince.
The honourable member for Calgary, Rocky Ridge.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize and pay tribute to urban community associations and their amazing volunteers for the contribution to the fabric of urban life in general and to my riding of Calgary Rocky Ridge in particular. Community associations in Arbor Lake, Citadel, Evanston, Hawkwood, Concora, Ranchlands, Rocky Ridge, Royal Oak, Sage Hill, Scenic Acres, Sherwood, Silver Springs, Tuscany, and now Nolan Hill greatly increase the quality of life in these neighborhoods. Dedicated volunteers in each community make their neighborhoods great places to live, raise families, and enjoy retirement. These associations are the civic backbone of neighborhoods. Their volunteers put on festivals, run programs for youth and seniors, maintain recreation venues, operate pools, organize cleanups and beautification projects, and much, much more. Without community associations, our neighborhoods would not be the fantastic places that they are. Please join me in recognizing the importance of urban community associations.
Honourable member for Toronto Danforth.
Last Sunday, I paddled down the Don River with friends, residents from Toronto Danforth, as well as my colleagues from the member for Don Valley West and King Vaughan. Paddle the Don celebrates the importance of this major Toronto watershed in the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of New Credit and the resplendent parkland that surrounds it and supports it. Led by the representatives of the Métis Nation of Ontario, this 10-kilometre paddle reminds us of the benefits we've received from the Don River watershed over the years and from the harm that we've done to it. Le Toronto Regional Conservation Authority cherche à protéger la...
The authority is working towards protecting the Don from the pressures of urbanization and bringing some of the 1.2 million people who live in its watershed to the river, and this is an important educational tool. With the help of volunteers from the Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary, Scouts Canada, and many others, this rainy day in Toronto was a wonderful experience. Thank you.
Wellington.
I am pleased to rise today to speak during Mental Health Week. Brian Hansel, a father from my riding, founded the Paul Hansel Foundation in memory of his son. The Paul Hansel Foundation looks to break down barriers and establish a proactive and preventative dialogue that puts mental health on an equal footing with all other forms of health. The Conversation Plate initiative was created to get people talking about all aspects of mental health. Today, the Foundation will celebrate the official Conversation Plate launch at Assumption Catholic Secondary School in Burlington. Assumption students will be performing their play, Beneath Our Skin, which sheds light on difficult mental wellness issues. This past weekend, I had the opportunity to make my own conversation plate, and I am proud to take the lead on a conversation thread here in the House. I congratulate Brian, the Foundation, and Assumption students on this important issue and look forward to sharing this plate and this conversation with my colleagues. Thank you.
Honourable member for Calgary Forest Lawn.
Monsieur le Président, May 15th.
Mr. Speaker.
We hope that soon it will be recognized as the National Day of Midwives here in Canada. Midwives in Canada are represented by the Canadian Association of Midwives. Their organization provides leadership and advocacy for midwifery as the regulated primary maternity care system. Midwives are also well positioned to address the specific challenges still faced by women in rural, remote, and Aboriginal communities in Canada, as well as in the developing nations. Today, I also attended the event on Parliament Hill by the Canadian Network for Maternal, Newborn and Child Health, an organization which works to improving women's and children's health worldwide. Midwives play a critical role in this area too. Mr. Speaker, we must work on increasing women's access to quality midwifery services. Today, on the International Day of Midwife, I ask all my colleagues to please join me in celebrating the profession of midwifery in Canada and in the world.
Way to go, Deepak. Good for you.
The honourable member for Marc Aurel Fortin. Mr. Speaker, I had the pleasure this week of awarding certificates of recognition to several young people in my riding for their excellent results in the 21st Dictée Lavalloise. As a former teacher, I am proud of the growing success of the Laval Dictée. This family activity has gone international, with youth from Burkina Faso to France participating this year. Mr. Speaker, these young champions have reached a level of excellence thanks to their teachers. And that's why I'm so proud to be part of a government that supports teachers with the teacher tax benefit. This tax credit applies to the purchase of school supplies up to $1,000. I speak from experience when I say that teachers often don't hesitate to dip into their own pockets.
Burnaby North Seymour.
Mr. Speaker, it is a true pleasure to rise today to congratulate Simon Fraser University on its 50th anniversary. Named after the famous explorer, SFU has stayed true to its spirit, encouraging its talented researchers, faculty, and students to push past boundaries and engage the world. Their drive to explore and innovate are among the reasons why SFU is repeatedly singled out as Canada's finest comprehensive university. It is also what makes Simon Fraser's vision for the future so exciting. SFU Innovates is a bold action plan that embeds innovation and entrepreneurship throughout the university. That means all students, from engineers to anthropologists, can access the critical skills of entrepreneurship and innovation to succeed in the new economy. I invite my fellow parliamentarians to celebrate this great university at a reception to be held next Tuesday and find out more about how SFU mobilizes the very best ideas and people for Canada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Durham.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank you and the Minister of Veterans Affairs alongside parliamentarians from all sides for joining me and Romeo Dallaire at the 3rd annual Sam Sharp breakfast this morning, which each mental health week combats mental health issues facing veterans and their families. This year we heard broadcaster Joe Tilley speak about the tragic tale of his son Spencer, who succumbed to his addiction following his service in the Canadian Armed Forces. And whether it's PTSD, its effect on families, or addictions, our friend Michael Landsberg reminded us they're sick, not weak, and there is help there for them. And, Mr. Speaker, parliamentarian Sam Sharp returned to Ottawa 100 years after he left for the Great War, surrounded by students from his old high school for the unveiling of his sculpture by Scugog artist Tyler Briley, Mr. Speaker. So what a legacy this parliamentarian from 100 years ago has, showing veterans and first responders today that they're not alone in their mental injuries. Thank you.
The honourable member for Don Valley East.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to highlight a key contributor to research and innovation development in my riding of Don Valley East. Janssen Incorporated is the largest pharmaceutical company in Canada. It employs over 800 people and is providing world-class leadership in life sciences investment. Over the past 2 years, Janssen, along with their parent company Johnson & Johnson, has committed over $1 billion in investment to life sciences in Canada. Additionally, Janssen is launching a new venture on May 11th, the J Labs. Toronto will host up to 50 Canadian startup companies who will share over $3 million in world-class lab equipment and scientific support. I applaud the company for their continuous effort in being good corporate citizens and for their leadership efforts in life sciences. I look forward to working with them and continued success. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Timmins James Bay.
Mr. Speaker, it's International Midwives Day, and my 3 daughters were born at home thanks to midwives. Now, back then, it wasn't even recognized the province, so my bandmate Jason Collette and I had to barter the services for our daughter's birth by building a deck for midwife Bridget Lynch, who, of course, has gone on to be a world leader in maternal health care. But, you know, things have changed dramatically since then. In Ontario, we have over 82 midwives just serving rural and isolated regions. In Centre de Santé Francophone de Témiscamingue, I'd like to thank that team. In James Bay, Attawapiskat, serving communities like Moosonee and Fort Albany. Amy Boland Osborne has come home to Timmins with Boreal Midwifery. These women offer incredible service and mentoring. Childbirth should be a sacred time, and midwives and doulas have restored the power of this moment to the mother, to the child, and the family. So let's praise the midwives.
The honourable member for Lakeland.
Member for Fort McMurray Cold Lake asked me to pass on the following message to this House and to Canadians. Please pray for all the firefighters and first responders who are putting their lives on the line to save the municipality of Wood Buffalo. Many of the evacuees I've spoken to are very concerned about their future. Many have limited means as a result of the tough economic situation, and now some people were already jobless and now they've lost their homes. These people have nowhere to go, and they just want reassurance that someone has their best interests at heart, that someone is there to help them get back on their feet and to rebuild their communities. They need help to put the pieces of their lives back together. In many cases, just knowing we care and will not let them down can be enough. Canadians have never shied away from helping others in need. I am very proud of all Albertans who have opened their homes, provided food for their stomachs or fuel for their cars, and a shoulder to cry on, and in many cases, a few dollars for their pockets. Thank you, Canada, for your compassion and generosity.
I don't think the microphone was on for the very first part of the statement of the member for Lakeland, when she said that the statement she was going to read was a message from the honourable member for Fort McMurray Cold Lake. The honourable member for Spadina, Fort York.
100 years ago this week, an extraordinary woman was born, Jane Jacobs. Jane Jacobs was an internationally recognized writer and urban thinker, and a bit of a troublemaker. Her books on cities have been translated into dozens of languages, and even though they were written over a half-century ago, many are still being used to teach in universities to this very day. Jane Jacobs chose to live in Canada. It was my privilege to call her a friend and a neighbor. When she died a decade ago, her friends and family chose to recognize her life by holding a series of walks in Toronto, talking tours that showcased her lessons, her life, and the impact that she had on that city and others. A decade later, these walks are now being held in close to 200 cities around the world, including Canada. In fact, in Toronto this weekend, there'll be more than 200 walks in neighborhoods right across the city. I'll be leading one both on Friday and on Saturday. You're welcome to join. As we recognize the remarkable life of Jane Jacobs, I encourage everyone to look up janeswalks.org and join a walk this weekend and celebrate how city building and building better neighborhoods is not just important work, but it can be a lot of fun, too. Thank you.
Oral questions, questions orales, the honourable leader of the opposition.
Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, the crisis in northern Alberta seems to be worsening. Additional communities have now been evacuated, including emergency response centres, and the province has now declared a state of emergency. Residents are very worried about what the future will hold for them. Once this crisis passes and the reconstruction begins, will the Prime Minister assure the residents of Fort McMurray and region that infrastructure funding will be top priority for them?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the answer is yes. The rebuild of Fort McMurray is going to take many years, and this government will be a strong partner to the province, the municipality, and to the thousands of Canadians who will be rebuilding their lives in that important part of the country. The thoughts of all Canadians are with the residents of Fort McMurray area, as well as with the first responders working to keep them safe, and the courageous firefighters who are combating the fire. Over 80,000 people have been evacuated, with many still in transit. Approximately 1,600 homes have been destroyed, although the full scale of this disaster is still not yet known. The situation continues to evolve, and the Government of Canada is actively involved in ensuring that we support in every way we can now and into the future.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, the crisis in Alberta has gotten worse. Other communities have been evacuated, and the province has now declared a state of emergency. Can the Prime Minister assure us that once the crisis is over, Fort McMurray and the region will be a priority for funding of infrastructure and other... Right, Honourable Prime Minister. The crisis that the people of Fort McMurray are experiencing is terrible, and Canada, the Government of Canada, will be a partner not just in the current emergency, but over the long term. And therefore, the work that we'll be doing over the next months to restore capacity in that area, but also in the years to come to rebuild this significant city for Western Canada, to ensure a future for all of those who have been affected by this disaster.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals' complete lack of transparency on spending taxpayer dollars now extends to their negotiations with Bombardier. While they negotiate to give $1 billion to a corporation, we've been given no details. No details on how that will be paid back, and no details about what taxpayers will receive in return. So, Mr. Speaker, when will taxpayers actually get to see the bailout deal from Bombardier so they can find out if it's actually worth their money?
Honourable Prime Minister.
I will point out to the honourable member what I've said many times in this House. The negotiations are ongoing. We believe in a strong future for the aerospace industry in this country. We know that there are many good jobs associated with it, not just in Quebec, but right across the country. And we're looking for a solid business case to make sure that investments Canada makes in Bombardier or in the aerospace industry have benefits for Canadians, for good jobs, for our economy, not just for the short term, but for the medium and long term as well. That's the engagement we've made to Canadians, and that's the commitment we're keeping.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, we know that the government is currently negotiating with Bombardier, and it's important, this negotiation, but now we're even hearing that the government would like to get involved in the management of the C-Series. So I'm very, very worried when I think about the deficit. The Prime Minister is talking about the deficit, but he's talking about transparency in this. So what are the terms? What are they going to do? What's on the table with Bombardier? And when will we finally see the results of this very long discussions? The Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, Canadians expect that this government is going to invest to create growth and is investing in jobs to help the middle class and those who want to be part of the middle class. That is why our investments in Bombardier will depend on the negotiations that are underway with them to ensure the solidity of the business case and to see what the short, mid, and long-term investments will be. Jobs in Canada and the future of the aeronautics industry in Canada. That's what Canadians expect, and that's what we are doing responsibly. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, I think everyone was proud of Canada recently when Delta Airlines placed a very significant order with Bombardier. This is a better performing plane. It pollutes less. It's quieter. So what are the reasons why they're not allowing for the extension of the runway at Billy Bishop? What is behind that? Maybe they don't want to bother certain residents of Toronto? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, all members of this House know very well that we made a commitment during the election campaign to listen to Canadians, to respect the voices of MPs from the various regions, and whether they're in Toronto or elsewhere. We have listened to MPs, and we have made the commitment not to reopen the tripartite agreement and to respect the will of the people of Toronto. And that is exactly what we're going to do. We are going to keep our promises. The Honourable Member for Outremont.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals continue to be in favour of special treatment for the wealthy and well-connected. Today at committee, CRA officials testified that the sweetheart deal for KPMG clients did not include immunity from criminal prosecution. So my question is simple. If the Prime Minister is serious about tackling tax havens and remembering that actions speak louder than words, will he ensure that those multimillionaire tax cheats and those at KPMG who aided and abetted them face criminal charges?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we've committed to making sure that all Canadians pay their fair share of taxes and that the CRA and the Canadian government ensures that it enforces all the rules and the responsibilities linked to that. That's, quite frankly, why we put $440 million more in this current budget to go after tax avoidance and tax dodging, and at the same time, why it was a Liberal member who launched the committee study that is being done on KPMG and the audits to ensure that we're actually doing that right. Merci.
Come on.
A member for Outremont.
Comme d'habitude,
as usual, with all responses, he tries to do a pirouette. I'll repeat the question. It was a simple one. The Prime Minister says that he's going to work against those who don't pay their taxes and hide their money in paradises, tax havens. But today, it was revealed that the people who got the sweetheart deal will not be exempt from criminal charges. Will he take every possibility of the law, including laying criminal charges, to fight against KPMG and these people who broke the law? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, we cannot just talk about the importance of pursuing those guilty of tax evasion. We have to act, and that's why in our budget we put $440 million extra to indeed fight against tax evasion and avoidance. And that's why it's a member of the Liberal Party who put forward the motion to do the study on KPMG and tax evasion. And that is also why we are going to do everything we need to do to ensure that everyone pays their fair share of taxes in Canada. The Honourable Member for Outremont. Before walking the talk, the Prime Minister was sitting beside Mayor Coder during the election campaign, and he said that he committed to restoring delivery, Canada Post delivery to homes. Today, setting up a committee. So where are his sunny ways now? And where is his promise of doing things otherwise? Is the Prime Minister not ashamed of having fooled Canadians? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, what we have committed to doing is to consult and to study this issue and to understand. We understand that Canadians want a better level of service at a lesser cost, and that's exactly what we committed to doing. We put an end to the implementation of community mailboxes, and we're working with Canadians and with an independent panel that will carry out consultations openly to ensure that we offer the best possible service from Canada Post to the people of Canada. The member for Outremont.
The Prime Minister was fishing for votes in our big cities. He solemnly promised to restore home mail delivery. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now he says that home mail delivery will not be restored. I have an honest question for the Prime Minister. If the previous government had done that,
Order. We're going to hear the question. And I'll remember for order. Order, please. The member for Outremont.
Contrary to the Liberals, we're always honest. I have an honest question for the Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker. If the previous government had done that, what would he have said? Wouldn't he have said that they were lying?
I'd ask the member to be judicious with his language, the Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians expect good quality service from Canada Post, and that's exactly what we're offered. That's why we committed to stop the implementation of community mailboxes, and why we committed to working with Canadians to ensure that they get the service they need and they want at an affordable price. That is exactly why we are putting the time in that the previous government did not, to talk with Canadians, to look at the changing world of delivery of mail and services, and to ensure that they get the right quality. That is what we committed to throughout, regardless of the fabrications the member opposite might make about what I said or didn't say.
That's it.
I want to point out, the member for Outremont, that although I know we have debates and disagreements in this place, that I don't think he would want to do this when someone else is speaking, to suggest that he doesn't want to listen. That isn't the kind of respect that he wants to show, I know. The honourable member for Milton.
Oh, we're the motion maker here.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Mr. Speaker, continuing on the theme of broken promises,
yes.
It's been 6 months of disappointment from the Liberals, fiscally as well. Since they've come to office, they've broken 3 key election promises. Number 1, that the tax plan will be revenue neutral. Number 2, that the deficits would be no more than $10 billion. And number 3, they said that they were going to balance the budget by the end of the mandate. Wow. So after 6 disappointing months, can the finance minister, despite the Prime Minister's gloating in the House today that we keep our promises, can the finance minister tell Canadians which one of these broken promises is he most proud of?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to speak for a moment on what the members on the other side of the House might be doing right now. Exactly. They want to balance the budget on the backs of Canadians. So what exactly would that mean? That would mean that right now we'd be making cuts and to services, cuts to Canadian families that would make their lives more difficult.
Let's have a little order. We all want to hear the member speak. We all want to hear everybody speak when they have their turn. When they have their turn. Otherwise, we could have a very short question period. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Balancing the budget on the backs of Canadians means cuts to Canadian families, hurting Canadian families today. It means not investing in the future and getting to a lower growth rate. Canadians were hopeful and optimistic. They made the choice to invest in Canadian families today with the Canada Child Benefit, and they made the choice to invest in Canadians tomorrow through investments. The future of Canada is going to be brighter because of the very hopeful, optimistic choice they made.
Bravo. Now, member for Milton.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are concerned.
Member for Milton.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are actually concerned by the attitude that the Minister of Finance has been demonstrating in the last number of days. This week alone, he's denying a surplus that he inherited from us. He's also mocking us openly, saying that we're stuck in this whole balanced budget thing. And then he introduced a bill that actually repeals legislation which would make balanced budgets a law. Mr. Speaker, the minister said earlier this week that his kids and his grandchildren will be better off. But what part of sticking our kids and our grandchildren with debt and deficit is actually going to allow them to be better off?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to remember the most important promise that we made to Canadians. We are going to achieve a better future for Canadians. What we are doing with the measures in our budget is we are going to achieve a better future. We put in our budget measures that will be 0.5% faster growth this year, 1% faster growth next year. The Parliamentary Budget Office, the Bank of Canada, they've confirmed that our measures will, in fact, grow the economy. And that's what we're trying to achieve. That's the legacy for our kids and for our grandkids.
Now the member for Richmond Centre.
Mr. Speaker, for 2 days, the Parliamentary Secretary has accused small business owners of being tax cheats.
Shame on
And she's not alone. The Prime Minister has said small businesses are just a way to avoid taxes.
He said that?
And just today, a Liberal member said in the House that the small business tax rate doesn't matter.
Unbelievable.
When will the Liberals reverse their broken promise and bring the tax rate to 9%?
Good question. Good job. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for Small Business and Tourism.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for the question, because we do know that there is a loophole that allows some to use the tax rate to get out of paying the personal income taxes the rest of us pay all year. But, Mr. Speaker, we do understand small business, and I understand small business, and we know they need a robust economy, and they need strong consumers. So with their middle-class income tax cut, the child benefit, the investments in infrastructure, in broadband, in incubators, in accelerators, in tourism marketing, the list goes on. All of it, absolutely all of it, Mr. Speaker, helps small and medium-sized businesses. Thank you.
For South Surrey White Rock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Conservatives renewed the P3 Canada funding by providing $1.25 billion over 5 years as part of the new Building Canada plan. Infrastructure projects worth over $100 million. They were required to go through a P3 screen to maximize the value of taxpayers' dollars. But late last year, the Minister of Infrastructure announced that the screening requirement would be removed. Why are the Liberals getting rid of all the taxpayer safeguards?
The Honourable Minister of Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, the reason that we have removed the P3 condition is to allow local autonomy, to allow local governments to make their own decisions how they procure infrastructure. But furthermore, also allow them to tap into federal resources at a larger amount, at 50% of the project cost. Under the previous government, they only qualified for 25% of the funding because of that particular condition, Mr. Speaker. So our plan will deliver more. It will deliver more for all Canadian communities.
South Surrey White Rock.
Well, Mr. Speaker, first the Liberals removed the requirement for the P3 screen. Then they transferred responsibility from the Finance Minister to the Infrastructure Minister. And now they introduced Bill C-15, which gives the Infrastructure Minister the power to sell off shares and assets of P3 Canada. Now, Mr. Speaker, something here doesn't add up. Are the Liberals intending to shut down P3 Canada and sell off its assets in order to pay for their out-of-control spending?
Yes. The Honourable Minister of Infrastructure.
Mr. Speaker, P3s are a valuable tool that we respect, but we also respect the ability of the local governments to make their own decision. We trust them to make their own decision, unless the previous government imposed certain procurement process on municipalities. And we heard from municipalities, we heard from Federation of Canadian Municipalities, we heard from big city mayors, and they all support our decision to remove the P3 condition, so they're allowed to make their own decisions, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, we often hear this. The Minister tells us that we want to leave the municipalities to be able to take their own decisions, but now in Quebec we're trying to go through the province and there are no projects that have been launched. There'll be no work done this summer. So I agree entirely with my colleague. The example of the PPPs, P3, is another example of the government's inability to act to create jobs. Do you want to sell P3 Canada's shares to pay for your out-of-control spending, yes or no?
Minister of Infrastructure and Communities.
Well, Mr. Speaker, let me share some information with the House that despite allocating almost $2 billion for Quebec in 2014, the previous government delivered $0. Zero. Mr. Speaker. And so we are committed to delivering that money to Quebec, along with new money under public transit, under green infrastructure, and social infrastructure. We are here to support communities. We are here to support.
The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Mr. Speaker, we know that the Trans-Pacific Partnership will have huge consequences for Canada. We're talking about 60,000 lost jobs and a loss of our sovereignty, and the arguments against it are piling up. This morning at the International Trade Committee, Jem Balsillie said that the Trans-Pacific Partnership, under it, the best thing that a Canadian company could do would be to move to the United States. Mr. Speaker, is it because there are so many problems with the agreement that the government refuses entirely to make public the economic impact study on the Trans-Pacific Partnership? The Honourable Minister of International Trade. Mr. Speaker, the NDP was opposed to the TPP without even having seen it, but this government committed to consulting Canadians, and that is what we are doing. Next week, the International Trade Committee will consult Canadians in Montreal, Quebec City, Windsor, and Toronto. This will be a very significant consultation, an important debate for our country, and I would appreciate the contribution of the members across the way.
Did he say? Sorry. Mr. Speaker, we saw the Trans-Pacific Partnership at the same time the Liberals did, and that was after the campaign. That was after the election, after it was kept in secret by the Conservatives. The fact is, this minister refuses to release an impact study and refuses to launch the public consultations that Liberals promised. Mr. Speaker, the committee's work is not her own. But we are hearing very troubling testimony. Today, RIM founder Jim Balsillie warned that, quote, there will never be another large Canadian tech company under the TPP. He has also said Canada would be a colossal loser. Why is the minister proceeding with a deal that will so badly damage Canada's tech sector?
Minister of International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, I'm afraid that's simply not true. The NDP opposed the TPP before even reading it during the campaign. We were all there. We made a commitment to consult with Canadians, and that's what we are doing. Next week, I'm delighted that the Trade Committee is actively consulting with Canadians. It will be in Montreal, Quebec City, Windsor, and Toronto. This is a very important national debate. It's important not to cut it short.
Honourable Member for Carleton Trail, Eagle Creek.
Mr. Speaker, earlier this week, the Transport Minister was at committee discussing his Air Canada bill. When asked by one of his own members how carrier maintenance obligations affect its competitiveness, he had no answer. Shockingly, he responded by saying, "It's a big, serious question, and I don't have the answer at my fingertips." If the entire purpose of this legislation is to make Air Canada more competitive, could the minister at least have done his homework before introducing this bill?
Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, I always do my homework before I speak, and I want to make it very, very clear that one of the reasons that we are amending this act is because not only to prevent litigation in the future, but also to allow Air Canada to have more flexibility when it is competing in a very competitive environment domestically and internationally. We know that by removing from them certain obligation with respect to where they must do their maintenance, we will allow them to be more competitive. We're convinced of this, and that's why we're doing it. Thank you.
Member for Carleton Trail, Eagle Creek.
Well, Mr. Speaker, with that answer, it's clear that the Minister of Transport still hasn't done his homework. I also asked if he could tell the committee what Air Canada's maintenance costs are, to which he responded, "No, I can't tell you what the costs are." So let's try again. The minister obviously can't explain the bill, so can he at least provide a shred of evidence to support it?
Transport.
I believe, Mr. Speaker, that my honourable colleague is simply going on a fishing trip here. It is expensive for our airlines to maintain their airplanes, to make sure that they are very, very safe. It is a significant amount of their fiscal expenditures every day of the year. We are providing Air Canada, which has over 400 airplanes, with some flexibility in deciding where it will do its maintenance, while holding on to the obligation that they must do some maintenance in Ontario, Quebec, and the province of Ontario.
The Honourable Member for Richmond-Arthabasca. Mr. Speaker, Canadians and Quebecers are very concerned about the government's positions to support the aerospace sector, which is of critical importance to our economy. Recently, when we asked the Minister of Transport why he had accepted to put C-10 under closure, which would allow Air Canada to do its maintenance abroad, he said it was to make them more competitive. Will the minister finally admit that he's leaving Canada a free hand and that they will be sacrificing quality jobs here in Canada? The Honourable Minister of Transport. Mr. Speaker, the fact that the province of Quebec and the province of Manitoba have decided to drop their lawsuits against Air Canada has allowed us to make amendments to the law under C-10 on Air Canada public participation. That's what we're doing, but I remind my colleague that there are still obligations on Air Canada's part to do maintenance in Ontario, in Quebec, and in Manitoba. Thank you. Honourable Member for Richmond-Arthabasca. Mr. Speaker, transferring these maintenance jobs abroad, if that's going to make Air Canada more competitive, I'm really seriously concerned. Where the Quebec Minister of the Economy urged the government to take its time with the bill, the Minister of Transport seems to be very much in a hurry and shut down debate for reasons that he's having trouble explaining. There's something fishy here. Mr. Speaker, can the minister clarify his position and explain why he was in such a hurry to shut down debate? The Honourable Minister of Transport. Mr. Speaker, I'm not in a hurry. And to explain to him, I'll speak slowly. We decided to change the legislation, C-10, as I've said from the outset, because the province of Quebec and the province of Manitoba decided to drop their lawsuits against Air Canada. This allows us to clarify the law and to give more flexibility to Air Canada as to its decisions regarding maintenance of its aircraft. Thank you. Members know that disagreements here are acceptable, but I think we have to be respectful of comments.
Mr. Speaker, ever since the old Liberals slashed billions in funding for post-secondary education, the cost of tuition has skyrocketed. Now, according to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, a majority of Canadian students are from higher income families. The PBO also said that a majority of federal funding is benefiting these same wealthy families, and the Liberals' recent budget won't significantly change this situation. The Liberals claim to help the middle class, but they're actually doing the opposite. So why don't they help all students get a good quality education?
The Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the member for that question. That is exactly what we're doing in Budget 2016. We are helping 250,000 lower-income Canadian students with grants that are going from $2,000 to $3,000, a 50% increase. We're helping another 100,000 middle-income Canadian students going from $800 to $1,200, a 50% increase. We're making an enormous difference for the students of today, and we know that's going to help us today and tomorrow.
The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Loire. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals haven't understood anything. The report of the Parliamentary Budget Officer confirms today that federal measures to foster access to post-secondary studies benefit largely high-income families, and the budget won't change anything. We've also learned that the government is spending less on post-secondary education for Indigenous peoples, and some 40% of students end their studies with a debt of $25,000. The government says that it wants to help young Canadians who are less well off to join the middle class. So what is it waiting for to make post-secondary studies accessible to all? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, on the contrary, we understand exactly how problematic it is for students now, and that is why we introduced budget measures in Budget 2016 to help them with an increase of their credit from $2,000 to $3,000 for 2,500 students. But in addition, we have changed the amount from $800 to $1,200 for people in the middle class. The Honourable Member for Laurentides-Labelle. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canada Post offers important services to the people in my riding of Laurentides-Labelle as well as to all Canadians.
At the lack of respect and service cuts the previous Conservative government imposed on Canada Post. In rural ridings like mine, these impacts were even more noticeable. During the last election, the Liberal Party committed to a comprehensive review of the Crown Corporation. Can the Minister responsible for Canada Post please update this House on the status of that review?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Services and Procurement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague for his question. The Government of Canada promised Canadians they would have a say in the service that Canada Post provided. And today we are keeping that promise. Today I announced an independent review of Canada Post. The review will be a two-phase process, which will be completed by the end of this year. An independent task force will prepare a discussion paper that presents viable options for Canada Post, following which a parliamentary committee will consult with Canadians from coast to coast to coast. And we are encouraging all members of the public to take part in this very important review.
Excellent.
Of course, Lloyd-Minster.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The House Leader is once again being thrown under the bus by his friends on the front bench. He's turned himself into a human pretzel trying to defend the Justice Minister's questionable fundraising, and he's now assuming the position for the Trade Minister and her Hollywood agreements. Will the Trade Minister finally table those agreements, or is she prepared to pay for the ongoing House Leader's chiropractic treatments with her own money?
Minister of International Trade.
It's my job to promote Canada to the world. That's what I did in California, meeting with business leaders, cultural leaders, and the international media. The Conservatives opposed the positive message I delivered on television about Syrian refugees and to the LA Times about reducing income inequality. I was proud to do it, and I would do it again. The Conservative failure on these issues is why the Canadians rejected their government last fall and why they're sitting on that side of the House.
The battle first, Lloyd-Minster.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the reality is her marketing is working so well that trade numbers with the U.S. are down by 6.3% in March alone. So the question is simple, Mr. Speaker. Did the Trade Minister mislead the House Leader? That's just not cool, Mr. Speaker. Will the House Leader stand in this place and apologize for not being the House Leader, but for being the House Misleader?
Minister of International Trade.
Here's one of the things I said on TV during that visit. Quote, I think that it is incredibly important, particularly after the Paris attacks, particularly now with the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria raging around the world, to stand up for real diversity and to say our diversity is our strength. Mr. Speaker, now more than ever, the Conservatives should be joining us in speaking up for our belief in diversity around the world, including in the United States.
I'm able to hear the questions, but sometimes not the answers. Let's hear from the member for Lanark, Frontenac.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the Prime Minister said, and I quote...
No, hold on. Sorry, your light's on, I realize, but you got to wait till I sit down, as you know, as member knows. So, now that it's a little quieter, let's all listen carefully to the honourable member for Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
Hey. Oops. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister said, and I quote, "We are in discussions with the other parties to set up a committee on electoral reform." He explained that the reason why it has not yet been struck is entirely the fault of the Conservatives and the NDP, since both parties won't give consent without unreasonable preconditions. This whole process, Mr. Speaker, is imaginary. I've met with the relevant minister exactly twice in 6 months, once in December at my request, and once at a breakfast where she sat at my table for less than 10 minutes. My NDP homologue says that it's the same thing with him. So why did the Prime Minister just invent this patently false story about opposition delay?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I apologize through you to the member of the House. So we are engaged in many different processes, and on the focus on electoral reform, we know how important it is and how passionately members of this House feel about it. And I look forward to ensuring that we get moving on this committee in short order.
Hear, hear. For Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
Oh, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister repeated this 3 times, so I hope we can get 3 apologies from him. He said, and I quote, "There are ongoing discussions with the other parties," which is false. And he said, "There are ongoing discussions on the mandate and engagement of that committee," which is also false. And he said, "We are in discussions with the other parties about how to set up that committee." Well, Mr. Speaker, this is where I tell the MP that even in the world of quantum computing, the non-binary repetition of an untrue statement does not make it true. So why did he repeat
Okay, after we finish enjoying the joke, the Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to remind all members of this House that my door is always open, and we will deliver on our commitment to modernize our electoral system. We will deliver on that promise, just as this Prime Minister delivered on our promise to reinstate the long-form census and return to evidence-based decision-making. Just like he made good on his commitment to bring forward a gender-balanced cabinet, just as he's made good on his promise to introduce a merit-based, independent appointment process for appointing senators. I'm confident, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Hochelaga. 65% of the amounts invested in homelessness by the federal government go to funding the Housing First initiative. Only 35% remain of this homelessness partnership strategy for prevention. Shelters have to close down for lack of funding, and Quebec is pleading for a return to a general approach to homelessness. This week I tabled two bills, one on the right to housing for all, and the other for a national strategy for housing. Does the government intend to support these bills so we can stop sending people into the streets, and will it respect Quebec's demands? The Honourable Minister of Social Development. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague for her question and for her interest in this file. It is something that concerns us all greatly. The proof, Mr. Speaker, is that in our recent budget we announced a record investment, an increase in $50 million per year over the next 2 years to support the fight against homelessness in all communities. And I would also like to say that I am listening to my partners in the provinces and territories to do good work. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-Patry. Mr. Speaker, this is what happens when we need the Liberals from Quebec. Hello, you've reached the Liberal Party. All our members are currently hidden, but please stay on the line. Your call is important for us. Can you tell me what good the 40 Liberal members of Quebec are? For nothing. They sacrificed 1,800 Air Canada jobs. They're betraying dairy farmers. They're ignoring the citizens of Lac-Mégantic. They're neglecting Canada Post, the unemployed, and the French language. Are they asleep at the switch? Where's the Quebec lieutenant in that party? The Honourable Minister of Transports. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that my colleague perhaps veered a bit off track in his comments. The reality is that we are extremely proud of the 40 Liberal members from Quebec who represent the interests of their province. Inaudible for the interpreter.
A member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Mr. Speaker, 6 months ago, the Liberals claimed that they would, quote, immediately lift the Mexican visa requirement. And today, Liberals and officials confirmed that a standard evidence-based formal review has not been completed. Moreover, they confirmed that Mexico does not meet certain factors required to lift the visa requirement. So given this, at the upcoming Three Amigos meeting, will the Prime Minister publicly admit that he knows that the exemption won't in fact be immediately lifted?
Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for her question, and I can assure you that we are all convinced that our commitment to lift the visa for Mexico will indeed give major economic benefits in terms of tourism, as well as a stronger partnership with our second North American partner. That being said, I am working with my colleague, the Minister of Public Safety, to ensure that we mitigate any risks arising from irregular immigration that could arise from this policy change.
Honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Well, Mr. Speaker, if that's the case, Department of Immigration officials confirmed that prior to imposing a visa requirement for Mexico, the asylum rate was at 25%, and many of these claims were rejected as false. Normally, Canada would consider a visa exemption if the asylum rate is lower than 2%, and today at committee, department officials confirmed that this rate remains very high. What assurances can the government give Canadians that there will not be another wave of unfounded asylum claims if this exemption is immediately lifted?
Immigration. Well, Mr. Speaker, that is precisely why officials in my department and I are working along with my colleagues in public safety to find ways to mitigate precisely this risk, which is high on our minds as a challenge which we have to deal with. But that being said, there are major benefits that I mentioned earlier from lifting the visa with Mexico, and we are confident that we will be able to keep our election commitment while at the same time mitigating those risks that the member describes.
From Markham Unionville. Mr. Speaker, since visa requirement was introduced 4 years ago, asylum rate for Mexican nationals has remained below 1%. In 2008, prior to imposing a visa, asylum rate was above 25%. The Liberals have not conducted a visa exemption review and yet have promised to lift the restrictions. What are Liberals doing to ensure the asylum rate does not increase when they lift the visa requirement for Mexico? Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, as I've implied a couple of times, Canada attaches great importance to our friendship with our second North American partner, to the closer ties that will come from lifting the visa, and to the economic benefits to many middle-class Canadians who will benefit with jobs from the additional tourism. But at the same time, we are not unaware of the problems raised by my colleague from Markham Unionville, and I can assure him that we are all working assiduously to deal with those problems and to mitigate them.
From Mississauga, East Cooksville.
Mississauga, East Cooksville are eager to take advantage of the benefits of CETA, which will give our exporters unprecedented access to over 500 million people and a GDP of some $20 trillion. Can the Minister of International Trade update this House on what she is doing to ensure a deal is promptly signed and ratified?
Minister of International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, I was proud in February to announce improvements to CETA's investment chapter to make it a more progressive deal, and I recently traveled to Berlin and Brussels to promote its swift ratification. I was delighted there to meet with German Vice Chancellor Sigmar Gabriel, the leader of Germany's Social Democrats, who previously had concerns about CETA, but who now says, quote, "It's clearly a good agreement," end quote. The Conservatives spent hundreds of thousands of dollars celebrating CETA, but the truth is they didn't get it done. We will.
For Parry Sound, Muskoka.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Minister of Foreign Affairs said the previous Conservative government withdrew from Iran because we dislike the regime. But let's be clear, not only do we dislike this regime, we abhor this regime. Mr. Speaker, Iran wants to destroy Israel. Iran imprisons and tortures its own people. It sponsors terrorism around the world and is determined to become a nuclear power. So, forgive my confusion, Mr. Speaker, but can the Minister please tell us what he likes about Iran?
For Foreign Affairs.
Speaker, I like the people of Iran. Yes. I don't know how long I have for my answer now. Just want to say that yesterday the rapporteur of the situation of Iran rights in Iran said, from the UN, he said that we should engage in Iran. The best way to see improvement about the appalling situation of human rights in Iran.
The member for Port Moody, Coquitlam.
According to BC's Auditor General, the devastating Mount Polley mine disaster is the result of negligence by the BC Liberal government. This resulted in one of the biggest mining disasters in the province's history. Fish habitat was destroyed and mine tailings spilled into surrounding lakes and rivers. Mr. Speaker, the federal government must not turn a blind eye to this clear violation of the Fisheries Act. What action will the Fisheries Minister take against the BC Liberal government?
Hear, hear. For Fisheries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we value our relationship with the BC government and with all provincial governments, our partners. We will work with them to address any issues that come forward and deal with them appropriately. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-des-Mille-Îles. Mr. Speaker, for some seniors, the Guaranteed Income Supplement is an assistance that makes all the difference. In fact, during the last election campaign, several seniors in my riding of Rivière-des-Mille-Îles talked to me about this. In March, the government finished making retroactive GIS payments to vulnerable people who hadn't had access to them. What does the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development intend to do to compensate these needy people? The Honourable Minister of Social Development. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am very pleased to say that the 86,000 seniors who were penalized for this error will receive compensation for their loss of purchasing power. This error went back to 2008, and we will also ensure that these 86,000 seniors will not lose any more money due to this error. We want to make sure that these seniors are protected from these administrative errors.
Mr. Speaker, any changes to Northern Shrimp allocation could affect jobs in Newfoundland and Labrador, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia and Nunavut. But you wouldn't know it from the so-called independent advisory panel the minister has set up. 3 of the 4 members are from Newfoundland and the other is from British Columbia, and 5 of the 7 public consultations will be held in Newfoundland and Labrador. How can the minister expect to have an honest, independent review of the Northern Shrimp policy when he's excluding so many communities? Or is the fix already in?
Minister of Fisheries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I do understand the importance of the shrimp fishery to those that depend on them. Mr. Speaker, we committed to review the last in, first out policy. I have appointed a ministerial advisory panel that can assure the member it is an independent panel. Members of that panel were appointed and names were requested from both sides of the industry. They are on there. It will be an independent panel, and I look forward to the great work that they're going to do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government is taking a piecemeal approach when it proposes to add 4 regions to the 12 that are currently receiving extraordinary EI extended coverage. But we need a real EI reform, accessible to all, and adapted to the reality of these workers. We need to put an end to the black hole, Mr. Speaker, and we need a standalone EI fund, far from the grasping hands of the Minister of Finance. To break the silence of the 40 Quebec members of the Liberal Party, I ask, will the minister pledge to reform EI based on the pressing needs of the workers in the regions of Quebec?
Honourable Minister of Employment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very proud to say that we've completed the first phase of EI reform and are in the process of doing the second phase, much broader, much more comprehensive, looking at flex time, maternity leave, more comprehensive, and dealing with some of the more challenging problems of vulnerable workers and seasonal workers. This will include every region of Canada, and I look forward to everyone's input. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Manicouagan. Mr. Speaker, the Employment Minister remains vague each time we ask her about this. For over 20 years, the Upper North Shore has been calling for an EI reform that takes into account its high unemployment rate and its seasonal industry. She's refusing this to Manicouagan, but she's offering it to 16 other regions in Canada. Among the 40 members of Quebec who are in the government, some of whom represent citizens who are grappling with the same problems of the people in my region, for example, in Gaspésie, who will join me in convincing the minister that Quebec deserves the same treatment as the rest of Canada?
The Minister of Employment.
Mr. Speaker, it's important for us to recognize that employment is a fundamental right of Canadians and that we all want to see employment for citizens, no matter whether they're in Quebec or in Newfoundland or in Alberta. Our goal is to have a robust economy, and by investing in infrastructure, our economy, we are going to build a strong and sound economy and put more Canadians to work.
I believe the honourable member for Regina Capel has the usual Thursday question.
No, I thought there was table something. Oh, I'm sorry, I just have to try to table something. Fiscal monitor from February. Showing the enough for the No. Yeah,
we want to table. Is consent? Apparently not. Let's go on to the Thursday question. The honourable member Regina Capel. Oh, sorry, a point of order. The honourable member for Banff Airdrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise reluctantly following question period today because I think all Canadians would expect our Prime Minister to always conduct himself with the highest level of dignity. And I think to demonstrate the utmost respect for an institution such as the House of Commons. And that should happen whether the Prime Minister is on camera or off camera, Mr. Speaker. And on a number of occasions during this Parliament, I have witnessed the Prime Minister, and I'm sure others on this side of the House can confirm this, behave in a manner that I would say is far below the dignity of his office that he holds. And in fact, I think one could even call it childish behavior, in fact, Mr. Speaker.